Yeah, no Macdonald. Were you ever a communist? I was at one point. Uh, I do kind of think it's a political ideology of younger people. Um, but let's see what Norm has to say. Were you a communist? Were you ever a communist? Let's go.
Phil Leeds was one of the best comics in the world, one of the sweetest human beings. But during the McCarthy era, Phil couldn't get work. He was branded a communist because he had left leanings, and he couldn't work. And gee, I knew about him and I knew his work, and I had seen him in New York. He was hysterical. He was so sweet. Never did political humor even. And so I said, he looks like Maury a little bit. I'll call him, and I got him out to play his brother, a really badass brother. And after the show, the sponsors called me and said, that guy was great. Where did you find him? He's a New York actor. That's all I could say.
Well, you mean because he was branded at that moment?
Huh?
The moment you cast him, he would still have been branded.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They would have, if they knew he was one of the guys, they would say, you can't use him.
Wow, that's interesting. I know nothing about the blacklisting, but just as you said that, were Jewish people more likely to be blacklisted?
Well, I don't know about that, but Jewish people are more likely to be considered liberals, and so they'd be more vulnerable.
Really?
Were you ever a communist?
No, they called me and said, they knocked at my door at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Two guys dressed like that in black suits. Mr. Reiner?
Have you no shame, sir?
Mr. Reiner, FBI, may we come in? Oh, absolutely, gentlemen. I'm in my shorts. I was just woken up. They wanted to know if I knew.
Explain to the folks what the FBI is.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're looking for communist infiltration into the arts. They were sending people to jail. By the way, the guy who ran the whole committee was ultimately sent to jail and went to the same jail that the communists were sent. And they were so nice to him. They really were. Anyway, that was another part of the story. But
the FBI are at your door.
They're at my door, and I decided. And by the way, I was on the show of shows at the time, and I said, oh, here it comes. You know, I had done liberal things. I was a liberal, and I had done liberal causes. And they wanted to know, this is the question they asked, and I could not believe it. They said, sir, did you vote for the American Labor Party in the last election? And I'm saying, they can't ask that, sir. It's a secret ballot. And I said, yes, absolutely. Didn't you? And I decided I'm going to go with them. They were charming. I'd out-charm them. They said, why did you vote? I said, Henry Wallace, our vice president. He's a businessman. He runs a strawberry farm. We need a good businessman. Everything they... And I said, you didn't vote for, who did you vote for? Anyway, that's the way it went for a long time. And then they asked me questions like, you once emceed a thing for Mr. Barsky, a fellow named Edward Barsky. Do you know about him? I said, yes. He said, you know he was a communist? I said, probably, but I said, why did you do that? I said, well, they asked me to MC something. They were giving him a big award because he invented plasma, the thing that saved lives. You know, he did it in the fields during the Spanish War, the Franco War, and with a motor from a machine, from a car, a Jeep.
Sure, that's how I do it.
He got plasma out of that. And I said, saved thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives in the Second World War. I would, you know, who wouldn't be an MC at that? Then they say, you also MC'd a thing for a liberal thing at Carnegie Hall. What? I said, who asked you to do that? And I said, well, I was in Call Me Mister at the time, a Broadway show. Somebody asked me. And I said, Carnegie Hall, every kid actor, you have to play a violin. You want to go to Carnegie Hall? I didn't play the violin. I didn't sing. So a gentleman, and I said this to him, a gentleman, if the FBI ever has a big event, I'm your guy. I want to MC that event. This is the way I went.
I got it.
And then they asked me the question, do you know any commies? I said, I'm sure I do. And he said, could you name them? I says, commies don't go around giving their names, but, oh, you know any commies in show business? I said, sure, they're in every business. You guys tell us that. And they said, would you give us a name? I don't know, they don't go around telling their names. And that's the way we left it, and nothing else.
It wasn't illegal to be communist at the time. It was just, it couldn't work.
I think the Constitution says you're allowed to think the way you want to think.
Right. But you couldn't work.
That's exactly.
Do you ever think maybe it's a little like racism?
A lot like racism.
No, I mean, if you're a racist,
Oh, yes.
it's not illegal, but you can't work.
If you're a racist, you can't
Well,
work.
Donald Sterling, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think there's any
Well, he
correlation?
doesn't have to work.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. The amount of money he has, he could live another 100 years.
That's true.
$10 billion.
No, but a serious question.
Yes.
If a man has a job
Yes.
and he is a racist,
Yes.
should the job be taken away from him?
No. But his fellows should. His fellows.
Good news for him.
Yeah.
Not a racist.
Adam. No racist.
But he
Communist?
was a Tim was always
Communist?
who's a communist.
This is the good intro?
Wow.
I didn't want to bring it up, but he was a communist. No, I don't name names. But why don't we just get into this? You were talking. You just brought up communism,
Yeah, wow.
and it struck me. Right? Remember McCarthyism?
Mm-hmm. Eugene? What was his first name?
No, that was a different McCarthy.
I know, but I'm just kidding. What was his first? What was McCarthy's first name?
Joe McCarthy.
Joey.
Tail Gunner Joe.
Wow.
So he named members of he wanted names of members of the Communist Party. So the Communist Party members were named, and then they couldn't work.
Right.
They wouldn't go to jail. It wasn't illegal to be a communist, but you couldn't work.
Wow.
And it was the worst thing in the world. Nowadays, you can say things that people don't like, and
Easily.
right? And now people go, well, he has the right to say it, but we have the right to not employ him. So, to me, you don't have a right. You don't have the right if the consequence is that you can't feed your family.
That was there's a larger issue that my sister and I argue about religion all the time. It says, you can do. I asked her, what's the purpose biblically? I'm a philosophy major. What is God's will, whatever that is? She says, well, to do the right thing. It says, so you have free will to do the right thing. She says, yes, but if you don't do what he wants, then he punishes you. So that's not actually a choice. And this is the same thing. You can, your opinion is valid, but if it isn't appealing, or if whatever that we think is, then you can be punished for it.
And you have been punished for it.
I don't know. I said the.
I know you don't like to say that because you've been so blessed in your life. Probably.
Right, because there's nothing. My life is fine. I said, what's funny to me is that I'm a stand-up comedian. Have been that way for quite a long time, and we're anarchists.
True, yeah.
Leno says you shouldn't fall in love with hookers. And that's show business. Show business is just a prostitute. It's all a prostitution. They only like you for a while, and then they move on to somebody else. And it's not. It's just the way it is. And if you fall,
who knows more about show business than Leno?
Well, and he's
really, seriously.
he does. And he says we are blessed to be comedians because people come to see you, they pay money, and you get it. There's nobody in the middle of that situation.
Yeah.
And I said one time I was doing an interview for both. I did on MSNBC, which is curious, and then I did a Fox interview. And I said, in the interview, are you interviewing the character I'm playing or the guy that I am? And they said they didn't see any difference between that. And I said, it's a very different situation. You don't interview Mel Gibson or Harrison Ford as the guy in Blade Runner, but sometimes they'd want you to be that opinion. And I said, my opinion, it's always been that way as a stand-up. I hate taxes. I hate it as a stand-up comedian. I worked hard week by week. You get cash in an envelope, usually by guys in suits. So it was the weirdest thing about comedy clubs.
That's true,
You had an envelope would come across the table. But you'd have to pay taxes. I had this weird partner, I always said. And the federal government never helped me, and I don't know what that was about. They always assist you in comedy clubs. What did the government ever do for us as comedians?
Nothing.
And when I was a kid, it was 45, 50%.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Right? for regular people.
Right, for regular people.
For rich people, 80%.
80%. It was horrible.
Yeah,
I just,
yeah.
I never. That's always been my position as a comedian. I don't know why we got onto this subject, but this never is talked.
No.
There's something to do with McCarthy and communists. Is that how this went?
No, I thought because you brought up communism, that we're facing nowadays, where you can get fired for your political beliefs. And actually, communism was a sort of a dangerous thing.
Well, now they're like everybody likes them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Now communism is the thing. People want to be communist. And I'll say I was communist or at least I thought I was. But it just doesn't, it just doesn't hold any weight in the real world, communism. It really doesn't, but yeah, this wasn't like, this was kind of more informational than anything. So norms can be like that now. Anyway, yeah, that's the reaction. Sweet.